Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast daily. It is a Tuesday morning, and I've made it back. Shout out to Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham for holding down the fort while I was gone in North Carolina, ruining my body in every conceivable way. I have survived in a diminished form, diminished capacity, but ready to talk about Ohio State special teams with Bill.
How do
What
we
better way to get back in? What better way to get back in the flow?
I need to know how we shot down there before we talk special teams.
Buddy, golf became secondary to survival.
That's probably the way it should be.
I was already playing poorly. There was a lot of rust on the game. And then the one chip challenge effectively wiped out any possibility of a comeback beyond that. So, yeah, I would have to say no comment to your question, and we're going to bury the rest. But I'm back here. That wasn't my goal when I left, but it became the goal by about Thursday evening.
Okay, you're not going to get off that easy. I need to know the circumstances under which you came to attempt the one chip challenge, and also explain to people what that is if they don't know.
Boy, okay. I may have blacked out the brand name. I don't want to know it. It's not Takis. Maybe it's Pockies.
It's Pocky.
Yeah, Pocky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So my brother-in-law, Brian, so 8 of us on the trip, he was like, there were some guys like, yeah, I'm really excited. I would do it. I'm not scared of it. That wasn't me. But he bought 4 of them like 2 months ago. So during all the preparation, how are we going to distribute the chips? If somebody says this word or somebody does this thing or whatever score, you have to do the one chip challenge, and everyone, that'll be hilarious and awesome. Yeah, let's do that. So mind you, that's supposed to be half of us that are going. And it got to be Friday. I could tell like Brian was no longer going to force anybody to do it. I was in last place in our tournament at that time. And I'm like, well, a couple of these guys, I won't name their names. Like, I'm not scared of it. I want to do it. Like, I love hot stuff, not fazed by any of this stuff. Like, you guys 2 months ago were like, I'll do it. No problem. Like, let's go. A lot of that talk dissipated. It's Friday. We played 27 holes on Friday. That's a lot of time to consume beverages. Once we were done, we also stayed at the clubhouse at Mid-South for quite some time. We'd made lovely friends with some of the bartenders there because we'd been there all day. We arrived at 8 in the morning, played 27 holes, ate lunch there, stopped every 9 holes at the halfway house. We knew everybody there. We spent the whole day. And then we got back and we're eating a little bit more food back in one of the condos. And I was like, well, let's just start it. Like, give me my chip. I'm in last. I'll just do it right now. Like, you won't have to name anybody else. Like, let's just do it. And then as soon as I did it, within about 90 seconds of it touching my mouth, everyone just sort of left. The guys that said they wanted it, like, I'm going to bed. It's 9 o'clock. I'm beat. No, I'm out of here. I just had a gummy substance. I don't think I can do that. I'm out. All these excuses suddenly popped up while I'm just spitting everywhere. I don't know the combination of the peppers. I don't know anything about it. The box, I hope, is at the bottom of a fiery grave. It might have actually just lit on fire as soon as I opened it. I don't know. I didn't look into it. But I don't know the point, Bill. I know Ari Wasserman did it a while ago. Like, the chip itself tastes absolutely horrible. Like, The only thing I can describe is blue paste. I'm not talking about the pepper. I'm not talking about the after effects. The actual chip itself tastes like glue and is horrible. And then the effects are indescribable beyond that. We didn't get any of the milk. We didn't have any. So I just was slamming water and then Gatorade. And then I think one of my buddies was like, why don't you just start drinking this Eagle Rare bourbon? Let's see if that helps. I'm like, well, it'll help in one way. I don't know. It'll help dissipate some of my emotions, perhaps. But so I had a lot of beverage options around me, but not the one that was supposed to help. And then it got worse.
Yeah, I think we can leave that part up to people's imaginations. But I think I'm picking up what you're putting down there. The plan of chasing the Pocky One Chip Challenge with bourbon, I believe, is called Fighting Fire with Fire, and I don't believe that ever works.
It didn't, but I think it helped calm me down a little bit. I was in so much pain. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't like they were like, here, just take a shot of Jack. They're like, everybody had brought down like really expensive rare bottles of bourbon, and they're like, here. They had the huge square block of ice, and I'm like, I don't think I need that. That's gonna get in the way of the delivery here. I can't smell or taste anything other than fire. So just give me whatever. He could have given me Everclear. It wouldn't have made any difference.
Oh boy, I don't know about that. That could have gotten dicey.
Yeah, probably not. But
well, we're glad you're here though. I'm glad you made it through.
I did, and so that was my experience there. The golf I had a great trip. Didn't meet my expectations, and then I had hoped that I didn't have to. And I guess I should say they didn't make me do it. Other people had volunteered. I was like, well, let's just all get this party started. And I wasn't last, and I wasn't going to do it on Saturday because that would have meant that I had to be in the van on the way home on Sunday dealing with the day after effects. And that sounded even worse.
Yeah. Don't want to do that.
No, I did not want to. But yeah. And then they were like, oh, well, now I'd pay X amount of dollars not to do this. Everybody who was so excited to do it before. Like, yeah, cool. Well, guess we should have just done 0. That would have been
Well, it's good that you're still learning life lessons as you approach your 40th birthday. So that's always good.
Yeah, which is today. Wink. As we record this on a Tuesday morning.
Oh, hey, man. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So it's good to be back. I appreciate you guys letting me get away for a couple of days and not have to do any work. Bill, Berm and I are getting ready to go to the NFL Combine. We will be there from Wednesday through Saturday. We'll be working on some of the Dream Chaser series with Cam Brown. And there were 7 other Buckeyes that will be available Wednesday through Saturday. I guess this year they're actually going to let some of the media in there to watch the workouts, which is a big change from what you and I have done in the past, which is go do early morning interviews and then like, get out of here. The rest of this is just for television. And then, but so we'll see what we can get out of that. And then next Tuesday, what do we have there, Bill?
I believe, let me check my calendar here. It's the start of spring practice.
Mercifully, my gosh.
It is a week away.
And I thought we were going to be done with our position previews. Then we realized that we hadn't talked about special teams. I shouldn't have neglected it because I don't know that we've ever been asked one question more frequently on the message boards of ohiostate.rivals.com than to, I don't know, describe Parker Fleming's role for Ohio State. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and it's a valid question. There's like conflicting information here because there are not many programs that have a full-time special teams coordinator with sort of no other positional attachments. And I'm sure that Parker Fleming does other things than just coordinate special teams, but that's his title and that's his only title, is special teams coordinator. So I think there's a base level expectation that comes with that when you're committing resources to that one position. And I don't think that's necessarily the wrong way to go about it. It's just that when you do it, your special teams better be awesome. And like, if you look at some of the efficiency metrics, I think Ohio State kind of comes out looking okay. They're like top 25, I think, in special teams efficiency and FEI, and like SP Plus had them like top 10, I think. I think much of that is Noah Ruggles and Jesse Mirko are really good at their job. And I don't think is an accurate reflection of the special teams operation at Ohio State, which, in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, leaves a little something to be desired for a program that's now they're going to pay a special teams coordinator $500,000 a year. I feel like they should be better.
No, I don't believe that you are wrong at any stretch of the imagination. And as somebody who's been, let's see, frustrated or mind boggled for 8 years, going on 9 seasons without a punt return for a touchdown, and 12 years going on 13 without a kickoff return for a touchdown. That was primarily where I would look, because the return game didn't make any sense to me. You have some of the best skill position players in the entire country. How could you go so long without game breaking plays in that field? And not only did you not have touchdowns, you also had repeatedly putting back returners who made it into the greatest adventure of all time to even field a punt, which somehow extended to Emeka Egbuka deciding that he was Willie Mays. And that that can't be fun for anybody to watch. And some of it, Parker Fleming or the staff would be like, well, we're putting Emeka 30 yards away from the punt. That's on us. Okay, well, great. Then we'll just mark down that annotation for another coaching thing to ask about, because it extended to some of the coverage stuff last year in a way that it hasn't in the past. I know there are many fans of Ohio State who ask why they don't just find a kicker to blast it out of the end zone every time, and they like to play that risk-reward game of not allowing teams to take touchbacks and sending down what they used to call the piranhas to go pin teams down inside the 20. That used to be something that they did at a much higher success rate than maybe they did last year. So you go down the board, and it's like, if now it's 2 or 3 or 4, 5 of those units that don't look like they're actually changing the game, that becomes a much bigger problem. It's not just, well, you can't return it. Other teams are gonna take touchbacks instead of letting you get a kickoff return for a touchdown. Okay, that's fine. They're gonna make it harder on your punt return team to break an explosive play. Okay, that's fine too. But the rest of the stuff that Ohio State controls feels like they took a step back. I mean, not mostly last year, but it seems like that's been coming for the last couple of years.
It has, and I like they've been pretty good punt wise, and it's mostly because the punters have been so good at getting that ball inside the 10-yard line. I suppose, like, to play devil's advocate to the kickoff thing, you can say, well, the dynamics have totally changed because with the fair catch rule now, that just like you can pin a team inside the 10, but they're just going to fair catch it and get to the 25 anyway. So I understand that's different too. But for me, it's like, if you're going to have this guy, a special teams coordinator, then you need to be tight in everything, and they're just not. It's one thing to like not treat special teams as a weapon, which I don't think Ohio State does, and I wish they would, because they have so many dynamic athletes on their roster that are kind of just doing nothing as they wait for their time to play on offense or defense. And I think those guys could be used in a really unique and fun and interesting way on special teams if Ohio State wanted to do that. But also, and so their 3 of their 4 biggest games this year, they had like colossal special teams blunders. They gave Penn State a touchdown by lining up incorrectly on a field goal. They blew the fake punt against Michigan, and they would have blown the fake punt against Georgia for having too many men on the field had Kirby Smart not called what everyone thought was the greatest timeout in the history of timeouts before that happened. I don't know how that happens. When your only job is to make sure that your special teams are locked down, how does it get to the point where you have those kind of blunders on those kind of stages? And also, like, I wasn't at Parker Fleming's interview session when he sat down and talked to assistant coaches. I should have been, or one of us maybe could have been there and asked him a little more about this, but I know he was asked about it, and his answers just weren't answers. So unless you can tell me I'm wrong on that, but I just like watching back through it, like I didn't hear anything in there that was like, and I guess at this point maybe it amounts to excuse making, but there wasn't anything in there that I thought was like a satisfactory answer for why those things could have happened.
I felt like during the time that I was over there, which was not the whole time because it was going on pretty extensively, longer than almost anybody else that was out there, which I think is accountability from Parker Fleming, so you can give him, a notch in the plus column for that. But B, it was also because it was hard to get like exact answers. Doug Maurice was asking, him about adjusting from what was missed on the fake punt against Michigan, which they were trying not to say specifically that it was, a backup walk-on long snapper out there who did the wrong thing, didn't get it communicated, didn't execute it, however you want to put it, both of those things probably. But that didn't happen, and it was lined up to work. And then you did something different, and then it was going to work. And Parker Fleming said, yeah, like it was going to be a first down when Mitch Rossi got against Georgia, right? And I'm like, well, no, it wasn't going to be unless the officials didn't ever check to see or didn't count to see that there were 12 people on the field. So that part was kind of glossed over, and I can understand why based on the way that the conversation was going. And who knows, maybe they weren't going to call it. They didn't throw the flag. The play was run. So I don't know. Kudos to that if you're able to pull it off. But it wasn't just like, hey, they missed a field goal at the end of the game. Like, that happens. It was a long field goal. Mm-hmm. They should have got themselves maybe in better field position for Noah Ruggles anyway. Like, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about Jesse Mirko. Like, the stuff that is clearly in control and that's schemed up ostensibly by the special teams coordinator was not working. Now, he did draw up a couple fake or block punts earlier in the year. Like, I think the other part of this that people ask is like, well, why is Parker Fleming not only coming back but getting a raise to $500,000? It's like, Ryan Day does trust Parker Fleming. He does see great potential in him. There were a couple plays and a couple contributions that he made schematically that helped them in games last year, but blocking a punt against Maryland is not the same stakes as trying to win the game with a fake punt, trying to do the same thing in the Peach Bowl. Like, those are the ones that you're going to be measured by, and it's hard to look at that last year as any kind of success for Ohio State special teams and therefore their coordinator. I don't see it that way.
Yeah, they also had an extra point blocked against Maryland that was returned for 2 points. So I guess they cancel each other out, I guess. It's like, I don't know. I think my biggest thing, and it's not a personal vendetta against Parker Fleming or anything like that. It's just that, like, I don't know if that is the best use of resources. Like, I think obviously you need to have a special teams coordinator, and it's not automatically the wrong thing to have someone whose job is just that. But in a world where the staffs haven't quite been expanded the way that I think people were hoping for, and you already have an imbalance because Ryan Day is basically now, I guess, a second offensive coordinator in cahoots with Brian Hartline. There's an imbalance on the staff, and Parker Fleming has an offensive background in addition to being a special teams coordinator. Maybe he does some stuff with the defense, but I don't think that's his coaching trade. It seems like an odd fit to have that guy with that particular background doing it. And then also they just weren't very good last year. Like, there weren't, I guess it's too much to say that, like, special teams cost them a game because who's to say what would have happened in either Michigan or Georgia had either of those fake punts been executed properly. And even the blunders they had, like, against Maryland and Penn State, didn't cost them a game. But even, like, coming close to doing it, to put the team as a whole at a disadvantage because of special teams blunders, that can't happen in a world where you have a guy whose time is dedicated solely to that. So if Ryan Day believes in him, then I guess he does, and there's not much we can do about it. But I'm not so sure we've seen on-field results to this point that warranted a raise, maybe more than anything. The extension probably in addition to that. I just think there's maybe more they could do with that position and more that they can do with the special teams in general. But if I said I wanted them to use special teams as more of a weapon, and the times they've tried to do that, it's not really worked. Maybe they shouldn't try to use special teams as a weapon, and they should just play it straight up and boring and get the offense and the defense on the field.
But there's just no reason for that. That's the other part of this. Like, you not only do you have a full-time special teams coordinator, but you have one of the most talented top to bottom rosters in the country. Like, Ohio State's philosophy, and a lot of this is not unique to Ohio State, but no one really seems to talk about it quite as much as Ohio State, which once had a coach call a punt the most important play in a game, and then had Urban Meyer come in and basically, dedicate himself to finding edges in that part of the game too, by having guys earn their playing time on offense and defense by playing special teams roles. That's normal. That's how most places do it. But Ohio State talks about it and the importance of the kicking game way more than any program that I can remember being around. And maybe Iowa actually practices what it preaches a little bit more than Ohio State in that regard. But they're way more successful without necessarily having this amount of 1 through 85 talent. So that's the part that really gets me. Why can't you find someone to provide you a spark as a returner when you have the best group of wide receivers and you're recruiting the best, even if you don't want to have a wide receiver out there, best defensive backs in the country. Like we've all seen Cameron Martinez's highlight reel. Berm's not on here, but like you don't even want to try that. I know there was one opportunity late in the game that didn't work. Early last season, I should say, but late in the game early last season. And then it was like, well, that's it. Never trying that again. Like, okay, fine. If he's not the guy, there should be 10 others that are out there. You're watching somebody week after week, letting a punt go over their head or muffing punts or, when DeMario McCall was back there repeatedly on kickoff return and not having any idea how to even like pick it up. Like they're not just failing to find an edge. They're actively damaging their chances of winning games on special teams. And that makes no sense when you have such a dramatic personnel advantage in virtually every game you play, but you're also trying to give yourself a schematic advantage with a special teams coordinator. Those two things should be the dream scenario.
Yeah, they should, and it seems to pay dividends at a lot of other places who operate that way. And I guess for Ohio State, it's not quite doing that. It doesn't do it for everyone. LSU tried it, and then that guy was so good at his job that they made him not a coach anymore. So it's not a
what a promotion plan. That was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a foolproof plan to be good on special teams. But you would think that it would lead to some. I mean, I don't know, like better results. I don't even know what better results look like. Kick returns for touchdowns are weird, but like they happen with more frequency than belies the point that Ohio State has not had one in a decade
right.
on either punt return or kick return. And I think it does come back to like personnel usage back there. Paris Campbell came dangerously close like 6 times in 1 year. And maybe if had he done that, maybe we wouldn't talk about it as much. But he's really been the only guy who's looked remotely dangerous in the return game for Ohio State since like Jalen Marshall was returning punts in 2014.
That's pretty crazy. And Emeka Egbuka did look like as a freshman, he was going to break some of those kickoff returns, and it didn't quite happen. But like then they decided last year that he needed to become the punt returner when Jackson Smith-Njigba was out. And I didn't think even in the first place they should have been planning on having Jackson be the punt returner because he was too important to the offense. That's a whole different conversation that we don't need to have probably ever again. But like then they're like, well, Emeka's going to do this. And now we put this wide receiver here. He can't do kickoff returns. So we're going to do something else. Like I don't really understand or follow the logic of what's happened there. And I don't need to talk about it for another 25 minutes, but Ohio State will have to replace Noah Ruggles. I think we assume that Parker Lewis will be elevated to that role after, sitting out last year and preserving some eligibility following his transfer from USC. Bradley Robinson will not be back for the first time in 6.5 years for Ohio State in the long snapper role. So they took another transfer there, John Furlman from Arizona State, who Bradley Robinson talked about on the podcast daily a couple weeks ago. You got, Mitch Rossi that we talked about has played, some roles there on special teams. That's further down the list of guys to help there. But, they've got to figure out what they want to do with the return spots. And then they've got a new long snapper, and they're going to need a new kicker.
I am interested to see what happens at kicker. You're right. I would assume that it's Parker Lewis. I thought it was weird that we never saw him at any point last year. Even I think they had an opportunity with a couple of lopsided games to put him in there if they wanted to, and they chose not to. Maybe that was like an eligibility thing in preserving it. I guess that makes sense. But like Jaden Fielding's got a big leg too. Like they in their long search for a guy who can routinely put the ball out of the end zone on kickoffs, Jaden Fielding has been the best at that. So that's like a good weapon to have on the kickoff game. But I don't know, can he be a guy who's the place kicker too and gives you a little more leg from that position? Because that's the thing. Obviously, people saw the end of the Peach Bowl. Noah Ruggles was really accurate and reliable inside of 50 yards, but I don't think he had the leg to really drive it once you got more than that or farther than that from the goalpost. And it seems like Parker Lewis does, at least that's like the word on him when they got him from USC. Mm-hmm. And Jaden Fielding seems to have that too. Like you guys said, didn't you guys see him kick a pretty lengthy field goal? Was it pregame or during practice?
Yeah, it was the last open practice, whatever that was, Wednesday morning. He was banging some from like the 50 plus stuff was coming from Jaden Fielding. That's why there was some surprise. Like, If they're just going to take the 50, that's a huge gamble because he hadn't kicked any other field goals all year. But like that was also a unique twist to that. Ohio State was trying not to let us see offense and defense during the open practice windows, and what we saw was the kickoff specialist banging through the long field goals and not Noah Ruggles. And then, lo and behold, that scenario wound up being pretty important.
Wow, it's weird. Special teams are important, huh? Who would have thought?
Well, we've talked about them longer than many other positions already today on this episode, so they must be pretty important. And I understand Ohio State fans' frustration because they've been hearing about it for years and years that how important special teams are, and they've embraced that message, and so now they know when it doesn't meet the standard, and they want answers. We don't have
not meeting the standard. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like we have opinions. I don't know if we have answers.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it does sound like a vent session or personal. Like it's not that way for Parker Fleming because I understand why people in the Woody like. I mean, he's got a great personality. He does know a lot of football. I think that some of the difficulty is like figuring out that role. He was a quarterback, and I assume that he thought his career would be, helping on the offensive staff somewhere. And Ohio State's fully loaded there. He said in that press conference earlier in the month that he's working with the defensive backs. Well, that's good for him. He's willing to do other things, but he's not in a GA or quality control position anymore. And there's a finite number of full-time spots on the staff. So, if you're not maximizing all of those while holding yourself up to win national championships as your ultimate goal, I think that's a difficult situation to square.
It is, and it puts I don't know. They're giving him a new contract, and he's going to be here for another 2 years. That's the way they do business. But it puts special teams in like a weird spotlight this year, like a spotlight I was not really expecting Ohio State special teams to be in. But I think it's fair that they are in that. If you're going to sort of double up and put even more of an investment into that than you have been previously, then the results need to be better. So I guess we'll see if they are.
There you go. I know you like it. You want to talk about punting all the time. You're a special teams fanatic, just as much as offensive lineman. So that spotlight wasn't going to change no matter what for you. But now you're just going to have more company.
That's right. You got to respect the punt. Punt is very important.
That's right. All right. So that's about as much as we could possibly talk about special teams before a spring camp, where probably not going to be evaluating a ton of that. Last year, the kicker didn't even show up for spring camp. So who knows how much we'll actually learn in March and April in that regard, but we'll be watching it anyway, as we always do. It's finally just 1 week away until spring camp is here. We still have a lot more shows, as I said, coming from the Combine this week. That'll be most of the focus for us on the podcast daily. We'll see what else. If anything else needs to be covered, we will certainly do that as we get ready for next Tuesday to be back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. For Bill Landis, I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us on the podcast daily. We will talk to you later.